There are roughly 130 Boeing 747 freighters still flying in the world today. Each one of them can carry 137 tons of cargo at maximum payload. The most modern replacement Boeing makes, the 777 freighter, tops out at 102 tons. That's a 35-ton gap, the weight of a fully loaded semi-truck. Gone. But the payload difference is not the real problem. The real problem is something that no aircraft currently in production and no aircraft currently being developed can solve. And when the last 747 with a nose door is finally retired sometime in the 2040s, that problem is going to become very real, very fast.
Aviate has reached 20,000 subscribers passionate about aviation. Our sincere thanks for your support. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.
On March 16, 2026, the CEO of Atlas Air Worldwide signed a contract with Airbus in Toulouse, France, a firm order for 20 A350 freighters with options for 20 more. Deliveries begin in 2029 and run through 2034. Airbus called Atlas the largest customer of the A350 freighter in the program's history. Atlas will operate twice as many A350 freighters as the second largest operator of this model in the world. But what Steen said publicly is what's drawing attention. According to the CEO of Atlas Air, there is a shortage of wide-body freighters in the world today, and that probably won't change in the coming decades. The largest air cargo operator on the planet does not have enough aircraft to meet its own demand, and it doesn't expect that to change for decades. Atlas serves more than 300 destinations across 90 countries. It employs approximately 5,000 people. It operates the largest fleet of 747 freighters on the planet, and it carries roughly 13% of all global air cargo by tonnage. It's also one of the primary contracted air transport providers for the United States military. When a company of this scale makes its first Airbus purchase after more than 30 years operating exclusively Boeing aircraft, it sets off an alarm in the market. But not the alarm you're imagining. To understand what's really happening here, we need to go back to 1965. At that moment, the aviation industry was convinced of one thing: the future of passenger transport would be supersonic. Nobody would want to fly on subsonic aircraft within a decade. Concorde was coming. Supersonic transport was inevitable. Joe Sutter, chief engineer of the 747 program at Boeing, had a problem. He was designing a giant passenger aircraft for a market that, according to every living expert at the time, would cease to exist within 10 years. So Sutter made a decision that changed the history of commercial aviation. He designed the 747 with cargo in mind first. If passengers really did migrate to supersonic jets, the Jumbo would have a second life as the largest freighter in the world. But that required solving a geometric problem. Sutter wanted to open the entire nose of the aircraft to load cargo in a straight line. The solution was to move the cockpit upward, creating the iconic hump of the 747, and allow the entire forward section to lift up. The supersonic future never arrived. Concorde failed commercially, but the front door remained, and it remained very well. 60 years later, it's still the reason this aircraft cannot be replaced.
Most modern freighters, including the Boeing 777 freighter and the future A350 freighter, load cargo through a large side door located behind the wing. That door is wide enough for standard pallets and even some aircraft engines. But there is a critical geometric limitation. Every item loaded through a side door has to be rotated 90 degrees inside the aircraft. That means the maximum length of any item is limited by the width of the fuselage, plus a small margin for maneuvering. The 747 with a front door has no such limitation. You simply open the entire nose of the airplane and you place the cargo directly down the main deck in a straight line, no turns. The numbers are remarkable. The Jumbo nose door allows straight-line loading of items up to 185 feet, approximately 56 meters, in length. It accommodates pallets up to 12.5 feet, 3.8 meters, wide. To put that in scale, a Boeing 737, the most common commercial aircraft in the world, is 110 feet long. The 747's nose door allows loading of items longer than 1.5 737s in a straight line, without rotation. Physics does not negotiate. In practice, this means that industrial equipment, such as giant mining machines, large electrical generators, oil drilling pipes, and enormous aerospace components can only be transported by air by sliding directly down the main deck of a 747. They simply cannot make the 90-degree turn required to enter through the side of a 777 freighter or A350 freighter. You might be thinking, this sounds like a niche market. Is it really big enough to justify keeping a 50-year-old aircraft in service? The answer is in the charter market numbers. Charter flights of the Boeing 747-8 freighter on premium international routes, Hong Kong to Los Angeles, for example, cost between $280,000 and $350,000 per flight. Equivalent missions using a 777 freighter run between $200,000 and $260,000. Think about what that means. The 747 burns more fuel, it has 4 engines, it costs more to maintain, and yet it commands a significant premium. The truth is that cargo airlines do not love the 747 out of nostalgia. They love it because it generates revenue on missions that no other aircraft can perform. Oversized cargo operates on extremely tight deadlines. An ocean oil platform cannot wait. Every day it sits idle costs hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost production. Emergency equipment, industrial generators, large medical equipment, flood pumps cannot be late. Aerospace components are scheduled minute by minute inside assembly lines that cost billions to operate. The 747 does not compete on fuel efficiency. It competes on the ability to solve urgent problems no other aircraft can solve, and it charges a price no other aircraft can charge. This leads to the obvious question. If the Jumbo is irreplaceable, why aren't Boeing or Airbus developing a successor? The answer is the same one that appears in nearly every story involving specialized aircraft and modern aviation. The economic scale simply does not close. The oversized cargo market that genuinely requires a front door represents a small fraction of global air cargo volume, maybe 5%, maybe even less. Developing an entirely new aircraft with a front door would cost between $15 and $25 billion before manufacturing a single unit. To recover that investment, the manufacturer would need to sell hundreds of aircraft. But the oversized cargo market does not demand hundreds of new airplanes, at most a few dozen. The math simply does not work. Boeing had the technology, the experience, and decades of accumulated knowledge. Airbus designed the A350 freighter from scratch as an entirely new freighter. Neither of them included a front door. So the industry arrived at a collective decision. Everyone agreed the problem exists. Everyone agreed it would eventually need to be solved. And everyone decided it was somebody else's problem. That was 20 years ago. Nobody has moved. If you still have doubts about how irreplaceable the 747 is, consider the most extraordinary example in this story. It comes from inside Boeing itself. When Boeing decided to build the 787 Dreamliner, it made a bold decision: distribute manufacturing across the world. Sections of the fuselage would be built in Japan and Italy, the wings in other locations, final assembly in Everett, Washington. But this created a giant logistical problem. How do you move entire fuselage sections, pieces measuring tens of meters from Japan to the United States? Ships take weeks. The Everett factory cannot wait weeks. Production needed to be continuous. Boeing's solution was to create an aircraft specifically for this function.
The Boeing 747-400 large cargo freighter.
Known as the Dreamlifter, it's a converted 747 with a giant bulbous fuselage designed to transport the enormous sections of the 787. In which feature of the original 747 did the Dreamlifter retain? In other words, Boeing's most modern aircraft, the 787 Dreamliner, can only be assembled because a 747 with 50 years of design history still exists to move its components. The successor depends on the predecessor. And the most striking part of this story? There is no plan inside Boeing to change this. No replacement in development, no project on paper, nothing. So what actually happens when the last 747 with a front door is finally retired? The short answer is nobody knows for sure, and that uncertainty is already shifting the market right now. Secondary market prices for well-maintained Boeing 747-400 freighters remain surprisingly strong. Specialized operators are competing aggressively to secure their share of the airplane. In August 2025, ANA Holdings of Japan acquired Nippon Cargo Airlines in a transaction that caught the market by surprise. The reason?
Specifically to obtain the 8 Boeing 747-8 freighters operated by Nippon Cargo, aircraft whose unique nose-loading capability is essential for moving advanced manufacturing equipment in the Japanese technology supply chain. Semiconductor manufacturing tools, lithography equipment, giant components for industrial plants, all of them depend on the 747. When the last 747 with a front door is retired, currently projected for sometime in the 2040s, air cargo manufacturers, oil platform builders, aircraft assemblers, and humanitarian aid organizations will need a solution that does not currently exist. It is not being developed. It is not on the horizon. It simply does not exist. This brings us back to where we started, to the contract for 20 A350 freighters that Michael Steen signed in Toulouse. Now you can see what's really happening. Atlas is buying 20 A350 freighters for standard high-volume cargo, routes where fuel efficiency matters, where a modern twin engine makes complete economic sense. And at the same time, Atlas will continue operating Boeing 747s for at least 2 more decades. The air cargo market is permanently splitting into 2 worlds that no single aircraft can serve at the same time. On one side, modern efficiency. On the other, raw capability, where the 747 freighter continues to exist in a category entirely of its own, irreplaceable, aging, increasingly rare. And here is the question nobody in the industry wants to answer out loud. When the last 747 with a front door touches down for the final time, who is going to carry the cargo it carried? Do you think someone will finally build a replacement for the front door 747 before 2040? Or will that capability simply disappear from commercial aviation, leaving a permanent gap in global logistics that nobody planned for? Leave your answer in the comments. If this video helped you understand something about aviation you didn't know before, drop a like and subscribe to Aviate for more analyses like this.